Alfiga, they used to do a conference and it used to be in Monaco. It was great. Yeah, it was a good laugh. It was a getaway. Nowadays, you guys do your conference in Telford.
Hi, I'm Mandeep Mudha, Head of Alfiga Pharmacy UK. Welcome to the Pharmacy Planet podcast.
Mandeep, thanks for coming to the Pharmacy Planet podcast. It is great to have you on. Mandeep, I know you're head of Alfiga UK, which is obviously quite a achievement, but a bit about where you started, Mandeep, because you've had quite a long journey. So I've had a little bit of background about yourself, and you've had a very long journey, right?
I have. It feels like a very long time. Thank you for the invite. We would really appreciate you asking me to come to this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. Yes, I'm it just shows how old I am. I came to this country almost 40 years ago. I'm an East African Asian from Kenya to do my pharmacy in Bradford University, of all places. So you imagine from the tropical climates of East Africa straight to Bradford.
Yeah, lovely.
I know. And I was the last of the 3-year courses before they moved on to the sandwich course permanently, which then, a lot of universities did. Finished there and then did my pre-reg for an independent pharmacy down in Kingston. And, learned so much about, managing a pharmacy there because you're hands-on in an independent pharmacy.
Yeah.
And then a lot of my friends from uni were all in the East Midlands. They were all working there. So it felt like a good idea to sort of head towards the Midlands. And I became manager of a Moss pharmacy there. Those days, Moss had about 90 pharmacies, and they just started opening pharmacies in Asda stores. So I was managing one of their pharmacies, which was actually one of their busiest pharmacies in Derby. Did that for about 2.5 years. But there was something there, Boo, that said, I need to, use my brain a little bit further because I'd had a good degree from university. And I just felt that I needed to do something.
And you weren't using it at Moss, right?
I didn't feel I was exercising everything I had. And a job came up at Aston University, and they were looking for lecturers in pharmacy practice, not paying you anything near a salary of a lecturer, but an opportunity to do a PhD as well. So upped it, took a huge pay drop, and moved to Birmingham, Aston University, where I think our paths crossed many years ago. And so I was there for 7 years, teaching pharmacy practice, teaching a bit of clinical pharmacy. I think there's been over 1,000 students who've passed through my sort of, the life there. And I finally got my PhD, which took 7 good years to get. And literally as soon as I did, at that time, Aston, a lot of universities were really besotted by you having to stay there to do research and get research funding. And I just thought, if I'm going to buy a house, have a mortgage, live a sensible life, academia is not going to be for it.
It's not going to work.
And AAH at that time were advertising for a professional services pharmacist. The MD at the time, he was really far-sighted. He could see, even then, that the future pharmacy would be services. And so he was literally taking a punt in employing a pharmacist to try and define what that looked like. There's no funding, there's no NHS funding, there was no recognition of services in nothing. And so joined there in a marketing department, bizarrely, and we created the first, I think, ever suite of services, and they were literally diagnostic tests that we encouraged customers of AAH to sign up to. We first started it by calling it Vantage Community Health Services. We trained the pharmacists. These were big, clunky diagnostic kits, that you sort of tried to get, and patients had to pay for them. Now private sort of services are pretty common. In those days, unheard of. We then moved on to something called Vantage Health Watch, and that's where we started developing the whole idea of services. And even back then, I still remember this slide I put together to try and convince pharmacists that the future is all about services. And it was a seesaw slide, and it basically said, today, 90% of your income is on dispensing, and the rest is sort of OTC. In 10 years' time, 15 years' time, 90% of your income will be on services. I was trying to sell this sort of vision to them. And Some of them bought it, some of them didn't, and look where we are today.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
so-
just, you've just packed in a lot of years in the last couple of minutes. Yeah, let me just take you back to what you just first said, the academia side. Like, I don't know whether a lot of people know this, but me and the two directors who own Touchwood Pharmacy and Pharmacy Planet, we were your students, right? We actually studied under Mr. Mudda. So Mr. Mudda was our lecturer at the time. It's so weird because even now, when we see you at various meetings, we have an automatic urge to just sit up a little bit and pay attention, because it's weird, because you're, as a 19, 20-year-old, like, now I see you now, and then 30 odd years ago, or what is it, 25 odd years ago, whatever it
Probably
was.
longer than that,
yeah,
yeah.
whatever it was, to see and to see you now, it's shocking. So you must see loads of your ex-students right now all the time.
And thankfully, I remember most of them visually, even
Yeah.
if the name sometimes escapes me. And I do. And I promise you, it gives me so much pleasure when I see how well you guys have done, or someone says to me, you know, I did this and then I moved on to this in my career. I've met pharmacists who are now in academia, who are leading in pharma industry, like yourselves, who own, you know, so many really good pharmacies, you know, people who form those friendships at uni. And honestly, it is an amazing, you know, thing that I went through as well.
I don't know. So my whole working life has been about either entrepreneurship and pharmacy, right? So it's been about retail, contractor, pharmacy. I don't know nothing about academia, but I've always thought these academics, these lecturers, they live a charmed life. Is it all relaxing and chilling? A couple of lectures a week and spend the rest of the time at the pub?
I tell you what, it probably wasn't as stressful as running a pharmacy or owning a pharmacy. The stress, bizarrely enough, was the fact that universities at that time were besotted by you bringing in research income.
All right, okay.
And in pharmacy practice,
that's how they get paid, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
All right,
what
okay.
drives the income. That's what. And in those days, things like pharmacy practice, the things that I was teaching, didn't really have any research income.
Right.
So you're constantly being challenged. Where's your research income? Because in the scientific sort of projects, you know, pharmacology, chemistry,
Yeah.
you know, they pay a lot of research funding because they want to find out a cure for cancer or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
In pharmacy practice, you know, it was just the practice of pharmacy. There wasn't really any funding there. So that's what made it really, because Aston at that time really wanted to be the leader of research, you know, because they had found a drug for throat cancer, I believe, at the time. And the university was really famous for the sort of, you know, the research that it was churning. But for guys like myself who couldn't really attract that funding, that was where the pressure was. But yeah, in terms of, you know, the workload and stuff, it wasn't anywhere as stressful as running a pharmacy or working in a busy corporate
So
environment.
7 years for a PhD, 7 years is quite a big chunk of your life at that
Oh,
time
it
as well,
was,
right?
it
So
was.
you've got to really love academia to even get through that, right?
You know, yes and no. Part of it was I was so far gone into the PhD. I thought if I
You can't turn back now.
if I don't finish this thing now, and because it was part time, I could only do
Yeah, so
either
many
the
hours.
hours in on the weekends or whatever. And so I got to that point where I just had to try and finish it in one way or the other. And thankfully, the university let me just get away for the last year to write up my thesis.
They wanted you gone as well.
Exactly.
Just
They
as-
wanted me to finish it, get my PhD, and that was a relief that I did. So that's how I got across the line.
Then you moved on to AH. Now, let me get this right. They created a whole new role just for you. You
Yeah.
must have impressed someone, or they had money to burn.
I think both. I think the MD, still to this day, he says the reason I got you because I thought if this guy's got a PhD, a doctorate, he must be able to present well.
Right, okay.
And at that time, being in a marketing department, it was all about presenting yourself well to customers and selling the idea.
But it's still the same now, right? It's
Yeah,
not
in
really
some
changed
ways.
that much, has it?
Yeah, you still have to, get your message across. You
Yeah.
still have to, work with your customers to do that.
Okay.
But he was ahead of his time. I mean, to think about the fact that services was going to be the future before there was even a
I
penny
know.
being, given to pharmacy.
I remember.
It was quite a thing.
So what kind of services could you possibly have started? Didn't you think I'm going to take this role and fall flat on my face? Because I know for a fact when it was dispensing heavy pharmacies, there was no need to look at services because they were such a small fraction of your income. It's the sort of thing where if somebody started selling me to try a service, private service or whatever it was, I wouldn't have even thought about it back in the day. So what did you even start with?
I think, and that's where the marketing was very clever, which was let's just try and create some of these health concerns messages for the public to be able to become more aware. So, for example, could I be at risk of having osteoporosis later in my life?
Okay.
Could I be at risk of perhaps, checking my diabetes or my blood sugar, for example?
Okay.
Those very early diagnostic testing. Can I check my blood pressure, for
Yeah, okay.
example? So it was just things that, and the marketing was very much about, checking your numbers. The sort of things that you see even now, not a lot of that has changed. But you're absolutely right. I think, to be fair, at that time, we attracted pharmacists who I suppose were running really good pharmacies, but they had a bit of a vision about wanting to do something else,
All
to
right, okay.
exercise their clinical knowledge, their professional knowledge. So it wasn't for everyone, but it was for those who just wanted to, do something a little bit different in their pharmacies. As
Okay,
well.
so you were there for 4 years. Did you grow the team, or was it just you just tried the services thing, or did it move from there a little
Yeah,
bit?
so as fortunate, whether it was because of what I did, my role progressed quite sort of in the time I was there. And then I eventually I ended up becoming director of marketing. So I was looking after the whole marketing function within AH. And that included, if at the time you remember, Vantage, which
Yeah.
was a sort of franchise support
Are they not
scheme.
around anymore?
Unfortunately, not.
Unfortunately, you're probably glad now with Alfigo that they're not
Well, they
around.
would have been a sort of competitor. I was looking after the marketing of the categories, PIs, generics,
Yeah.
branded. I was looking after marketing of manufacturer services, so quite a broad remit. But I had also brought in a pharmacist to continue driving the services sort of message.
Okay.
And so we created something that was very exciting at that time. But like with all things, then we have to move on.
Okay, and then how come you left there then?
So what happened was, I think I just felt that, I'd sort of worked big pharma. It was time to just, perhaps just have a bit of a break, do my own thing. And actually for about a year and a bit, I did a bit of consultancy, a bit of locuming. Just wanted a bit of a change because 7 years, in a fairly intense sort of environment, corporate environment, where there were a lot of changes also happening, just felt like wanting a bit of a break. And actually I'd really enjoyed that time because I went back to doing a bit of locuming, but also I then did a lot of consultancy for like some pharma companies. And I don't know if you remember, AstraZeneca launched a scheme called Making the Most of Your Medicines. And they were helping pharmacists again drive a message around compliance around using their inhalers at the time.
Okay.
I helped design some of that service as well. So, there was work going on and the pharma were quite interested in driving the pharmacy sort of services agenda as well. So I did some fairly interesting projects during that time as well.
Oh, so that's moving back quite a bit. So you jumped. So from manufacturers, then you went back into another wholesale group.
Good
right?
old Alliance, my first time around
Right,
there.
right,
So
okay,
so
okay.
at that time, because I think Alliance were aware of me having been at sort of AH and the things I did, they were looking for someone to fairly broad role to look after the categories, generics, branded products, PIs. Brand equalization, marketing,
bit of everything.
services, a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in the sort of corporate world where you have a wide responsibility. Part of it helps because you're a pharmacist, so you understand the needs of the customer. So I was at Alliance for just under 4 years, the first time around.
Right, okay, and you worked for Newmark as well.
So,
so
that was
Phoenix. So you
after.
worked for Newmark as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
You see now with Alfiga as well, and Newmark and Alfiga are basically competitors, you would say, right?
yeah,
In the similar sort of fields for
Yeah.
pharmacy services. So you must have picked up a lot at Newmark as well, right?
Yeah, and Newmark was at a time fantastic. The organisation that I worked in at a time when we were growing membership numbers significantly. When I joined, we were just under 2,000 members, and when I left, I think we were just at around 4,000 members because obviously they were driving sign up membership. But yeah, again, it was about looking after services, looking after marketing, and supporting independent pharmacies. So the constant theme in my career has been independent pharmacies and supporting them, whether it's at Newmark or whether it's at Alfega or whether it was Advantage, it's all about supporting independence.
Okay, now pharmacy is going through a lot of change right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's topsy turvy. if I was now trying to advise pharmacists of the future, I actually wouldn't know which direction. And we all know it's kind of service led, clinically led, but it's very wishy washy because you can be a little bit too ahead of the time, I would say. As in, for example, you mentioned how the person at AAH, when you start to introduce services and people weren't really ready. I can imagine right now that if you go hell for leather for various services, there's probably not as much demand yet in the population, and they don't realize that you can go to the pharmacy. So where do you see pharmacy? How do you see it now? What are the challenges we're facing? What do you, as an Alphega director, see the challenges for independent pharmacies?
So I think first and foremost, and especially in the last couple of years with all the pharmacies that, people have acquired, and starting from scratch, first and foremost, you've got to get your operational efficiencies of doing the day job. You know, that is still very much around the volume of dispensing prescriptions as efficiently as possible. Whilst we know funding has decreased in that area, but it is still such a big chunk of your workload and your income.
And your cost base, right?
Of course, all the staff and the cost of the drugs and everything else in there. You've got to get that right. And so when I go and see new owners, it is, have you maxed out the efficiencies of your dispensing process? Have you improved that as much as you can?
Do you guys help with that?
Yeah, of course. Yes, we do. So we have business mentors, who they're not sales people. They deal with any issue that you have. So for example, you've just bought a pharmacy, a business mentor will say, look, I'll spend the best part of a day with you and I'll look at how we can help you improve your dispensing operation, for example. That could be as little as, where's your stock in the dispensary? How are you, doing the process of dispensing? When are you doing your checks? When are you, handing the prescription off to a checking technician if you have one? So they'll literally do that. And they're very experienced business mentors,
How do you choose a business? How do you become I don't know, can I become a business mentor?
we have pharmacists in the team.
Another side hustle.
We have pharmacists in the team. We have the team are people who have worked either in and supported independent pharmacy for years. I have some of the team who worked with me in previous organizations who wanted a change. People like myself, I'll go in and sit with a member and I'll spend 2 or 3 hours there because, I've got that's what I've sort of done in the past. And it's just experience, years and years and years of experience. And so, it's very difficult to bring someone new into the industry and ask them to do that. So we tend to bring mentors who have got that knowledge and insight of pharmacy. They may have had operational roles with some of the big multiples, for example. So we'll do that. And if for example, the new owner of the pharmacy says, right, now I've sorted out my biggest challenge now is, how am I going to drive people coming to my pharmacy, or how am I going to drive services? Then we'll start focusing on that. So to your question, I think first, let's get your efficiencies right. Let's get, is your staff in the right place, right numbers, right staff? Have you got the right mix of trained staff? Once we get that, then we'll look at what can we do in terms of your retail environment. Have you got the best range, best product, best planogramming? Because you still have to drive your OTC business. It's still a significant chunk of your turnover. And then we can look at, right now you've got some services that are being commissioned by the NHS. That's great. Do you want to drive, for example, private services? So we'll work on one thing at a time because we can't just, start doing everything tomorrow. So,
it's a good job you mentioned OTC. What we've done originally when we first started in our pharmacies, OTCs, well, it's still a relatively small part of our business, but it was a small part of our business. It was the sort that even if you increased it by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, it would have made very little difference to the overall pie. So we found that concentrating on our OTC didn't really move the dial. Times have changed where dispensing is just so poorly remunerated. Like, we have no choice but to look at other avenues. So private services is one of them. We'll get to that as well. But OTCs, now we've pretty much ignored them, but we got a problem. I'll tell you what my problem is, right? We don't have enough OTC sales right now. And we need them to improve. So it's quite low. Now, anytime that I need to try and do anything, whether that's a planogram or whether that's some sort of ordering stock in and trialing something, or whether even it's just facing forward and getting the right stock levels in, I find that the cost of staffing outweighs any margin I'm making on the increase of sales. So on our branches, or a lot of pharmacies, you will find they have very little stock on the shelves, if any, and they might keep it bare because it costs more to maintain it, order the right things, get the right planogram, and you might increase your sales by even 50%, even 100%. It doesn't pay for a single staff member. So what do we do?
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
wish I had a. But I think first and foremost, we are lucky in pharmacy in that we have got a core category called medicines, PMEDs,
Yep.
GSL,
Yep.
which is should be our dominant category in pharmacy. We shouldn't be letting those categories go anywhere else. You know, people should be coming for those medicines to us because with it we have the advice, with it we have the service,
Yeah.
with it we have the knowledge.
It's what we do, right? That's what we do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that that is where core of the pharmacy sort of offer sits. And sometimes we start spreading ourselves too thinly into perhaps other areas of retail that perhaps, exactly to your point, either may not have the return
Yep.
or might have too big an investment that you need to put in the staff. So again, it's about just going back to basics and saying, have you got your core ranging right? And the core ranging is, have you got the right meds right? Have you
Yeah.
got the right PMED? And that isn't necessary. That doesn't come with a huge amount of staff investment in there, because the staff you already have in your pharmacy should be qualified and trained to be able to give the advice with those things. Once you've got that, then there are certain categories that we say, yes, you've got to at least, play in those categories. And I use that for it because if you don't, for example, have pain,
Yeah,
pain,
a bit of dental, bit of first aid,
bit of
yeah,
medicated skin,
Yeah.
the sort of things that people expect to have from you. Once you've got that right, then it's a question of, in your business plan, do you want to invest in new categories? So yesterday, for example, I saw a survey that said actually the wellness categories now are really growing in healthcare. That's something that pharmacy probably has never dealt with. And these are like the supplements and the sort of areas that perhaps traditional pharmacy never dealt with. Now, I'm not saying tomorrow go and start investing in that, but what I'm saying is, can you see if there is an appetite amongst the demographic of your pharmacy for something like that?
And if you want to invest in it, buy from Alfiga, right?
Or get the advice from Alfiga.
So what I found, I'll tell you where I find difficulty in the sort of community pharmacies that. So when we talk about pharmacies, we're talking about independent pharmacies. They're relatively small community-based pharmacies, majority of them. They're not big boot stores as such, not town centre boot stores. And what you tend to find is most people that we find that are walking in, they're ad hoc, as in they're not here to do that. No one comes in for their weekly shop. No one's generally, when it comes to vitamins, we find it's a hard category because you might spend a long time explaining to someone what vitamin suits them, but other than selling it to them once, they're pretty much going either to Amazon or to Boots, and that cost of, it's not customer acquisition, that cost of first sale it doesn't make sense because you've only sold one and you're never going to sell it again. And you've gone through all the training, all the explanations, sat down with them for 15 minutes. So we find for independent community pharmacies, our ones, that sort of range is when it's not an impulse purchase or something you require there and then, like a PMED. We find we lose all them patients or lose all them customers.
Yeah, it's understandable, but equally in this day and age, with AI and everything else, the knowledge that people now want to have or can get about specifics like what level of magnesium, for example, do I want, and I think they will expect that kind of information from a pharmacy because they're not going to get it in a supermarket.
It's a funny thing you should say that, Mandy, because people now are so knowledgeable.
Yep.
They come in and they'll say something like, just like you said, how many micrograms of magnesium, I've been having this many, and I have to quietly pretend and go back to the computer at the back and quickly Google the answer because it's just shocking the amount of information that is out there and the amount people know. So they're well aware of what they need nowadays. But what you're saying is the need for more and more clinical input is going to increase, and we need to be prepped for
ready for it. And that customer is also looking for your affirmation. They might have gone on, AI, Google, whatever, but to hear a healthcare professional giving them that assurance, whatever, and then it is about, either compelling or urging that individual, that customer to come back to your pharmacy. Now, I know what you say, that they'll go and try and find the product online. But for example, one of the things that I know some of our members, for example, are trying are subscription models. We see it
Oh,
online, don't we?
right, really?
Yeah.
In community pharmacy?
Yeah. So why not
Brick and
trying it
mortar
out?
community
Yeah,
pharmacy?
why not trying it out? So at least you've got some kind of a hook in to bring that patient back to you to make a repeat purchase of that particular product. Online providers are doing it, aren't
Yeah.
they? Everyone's trying to tie you into some kind of
Subscription model.
Yeah. So
I know.
I'm not saying that is necessarily the answer for everyone. But surely, I think by and large, people who come into the pharmacy, get all that advice from you, they have some loyalty towards you. You are
Yeah.
still serving their families, you're
Yeah.
looking after their health, their prescription. They owe you some loyalty as well. And it's playing on that loyalty to get them back in then for that purchase, whether it's a repeat purchase or to come back to you for some advice on something else as well.
The other seismic change in pharmacy is independent prescribing, and no one really knows how to approach it. Some people are really running, 100 meters, going for it all the way, and there's just so many unanswered questions. How do you guys? What do you got? What are you guys thinking in Alfiga? How do you think this is going to play out? Independent prescribing.
Really good question, and I think the last IPA meeting, there was a presentation about the results of the Pathfinder program. And I think, like you, we have to fully understand the outputs from that Pathfinder program, because if I remember, the two things that came out from there, the independent prescribers had delivered some really quantifiable clinical benefits that
Yeah.
have saved GPs quite a bit of time. But there was still a big question mark about the funding, because at the end of the day, there has to be some recognition that the pharmacists will be doing something they haven't been doing before, and there's some funding for that. So yes, for example, we have members in Scotland who are years ahead of perhaps everyone else in terms of how they're using their IP qualification. They have been endorsed by their health boards. They're providing a service that's being funded, reimbursed by the health board, both walk-in prescribing services for acute conditions, but also managing patients chronically. Now, that model in Scotland hopefully is one that we will, in England, for example, move to. But I think it's slowly in England, because at the moment, yes, we still have to have roles for all of these IPs, and the main role at the moment for many of IPs is to go and work in a GP surgery. There isn't necessarily yet a role in community pharmacy. And that's, I suppose, everyone's waiting for the funding announcements from the new contract. What will be the funding for an IP to be able to practice?
I don't
properly?
think there's going to be any funding this year for that.
And then if that is a challenge,
maybe even
yeah,
next year.
then I think then the IP program has to almost take off slowly and build up slowly, because otherwise what we'll be doing is, we'll be disappointing a lot of IPs who will want to practice but won't necessarily have the support, because you as a pharmacy owner, you're not going to necessarily have the investment then to be able to support someone to just want to be an IP. So I think then it'll be a balanced approach for the IPs to say, by all means, if there's an opportunity to exercise some of your IP in conjunction with some GP practices that are collaborating with you in managing chronic patients, for example, great. If there is some opportunity to instigate some private prescribing, great. But until then there is recognized funding, let's not just fully invest into that. So I think it's going to be a slow burn, at least for the first few years, until we know what that landscape looks like.
So we know, we're pretty sure there's going to be no margin coming in on the IP side, definitely in the next year or two. We know dispensing is getting more and more pressured. Yeah. Everyone knows that private services is something you could look at, but there's certain areas where private services is just a no-go. As in, there's just not the demographics just do not just mean that the private services just don't take off. People aren't happy to pay. So where do you see margin, or are we going to get more pharmacy closures?
There is still a risk, obviously, of pharmacies closing, and which is extremely sad. However, Yet we still don't see a complete uptake of the NHS funded services. You know, if you
Yeah.
look at Pharmacy First, we're still not achieving complete uptake of
Yeah.
those services. And it's been the same with, you know, the NMS service, for example. And now we have the contraception service, the BP service, for example. We're still, so there are still NHS funded services that we're not yet still maximizing the opportunity. And there is still some way to go there. So even if, you know, and I'll give you about the demographics, even if there isn't an appetite at this stage for private services, are you doing enough on those services that are being currently funded? On the demographic side, it's really interesting. I have been to some really deprived areas because I go and see members at least weekly, you know, and I go to different parts of.
Even now, still.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's part of my job. If I don't,
okay.
then I'll lose touch with so.
Oh, I thought you just like drunk coffee and chilled at the
No,
office.
unfortunately,
You better
no. I am pretty much hands on, so get out there. Otherwise, I'm not close enough to what's going on with pharmacy. And you'll be amazed, even in deprived areas, how much people want to invest in their own health and pay for their own healthcare. You only have to see what's going on with weight management currently, travel health. People still want to travel, and those services are not available through you know the NHS anymore. So again, before, even if you have a pharmacy in a really challenging area, before you decide that perhaps the demographic there haven't got the money, just assess that first. You might be surprised at the appetite that people have to pay for certain elements of their care simply because they're not getting it anywhere else.
Let me move on to specifically Alfiga now. Okay. Yeah. Now, what we find as a contractor, what we find is there is a lot of providers offering very much overlapping services. Sometimes not exactly the same, but for example, standard operating procedures that are offered to pharmacies that you can do. You might find there's like half a dozen providers that can offer you something like that. So what do Alfiga, first of all, what do Alfiga do? Okay. Why even bother becoming a member?
Okay.
And then, have you got anything that sets you apart?
Okay. So you're absolutely right. You know, the multitude of providers for different areas of support for pharmacy, and fantastic. You know, you should have choice in that. And I would never be the one to say, you know, ours is a million times better or whatever. What I would say to anyone, first of all, is at some point you're going to need different types of support and help from an organization like Alfiga. It might be SOPs today. It might be a mock GPHC inspection tomorrow because you're concerned you may be having one.
Oh, you guys do that as well?
We do that as well.
That's an odd one. I've not heard that. That's definitely a unique thing.
And it is, especially now post-COVID, you know, it's sort of, obviously the inspections are up. Or it might be planogramming, you know, for your retail offer. Or it might be a digital product that you want that helps you improve efficiencies. So what I would say is, first of all, look at it as who can provide you with a whole suite of services that you don't perhaps need every day, but you can call on when and if you need it. And for something like Alfiga, for example, we have that whole suite of services. We've got support services around the digital, we've got touchpads, we've got, you know, areas around the hub, for example, that you can access services. We've got retail support, planogramming, merchandising, we've got SOPs, we've got contractual support, you know, we've got all of that. It's there for you when and if you need it. And if others are doing the same, fantastic, you know, and good that you have a choice there. What probably sets someone like Alfiga apart or makes us unique is we then have the business mentors as well. We have 12 business mentors. These guys literally are there to come and help you, hold your hand, spend as long as it takes to get you to solve whatever the challenge is that you have in your pharmacy. So let's say you're worried you're going to be having a GPHC inspection. The business mentor will spend however long it is to go through all of the elements of what that inspection will entail and help you get ready for that. So that's the GPHC, a mock inspection. You say to them, look, I'm really nervous. I'm not really driving my private services at the moment. You know, I'm just not.
But that's a big one, right? There's going to be a lot of people who are finding that difficult.
Exactly, particularly with, you know, GLP-1, weight management. The business mentor will sit, put a plan together with you, look at how you'll market that service, show you what best practice looks like.
I might
the
get this guy to
SOPs.
run my whole business.
There you
He
go.
sounds
You
good.
know,
I think I need to
seriously,
retire and get them in.
honestly, the knowledge that these guys have is incredible. And what I always say is, give them your problem statement. What is it that you currently have that is challenging you, and you'll be surprised what they'll do for you.
Oh, there's going to be a long list. So they better get comfortable. I have a bone to pick with Alfiga. I have an issue, a real bad. Alfiga, they used to do a conference, and it used to be in Monaco. And I've been multiple times to Monaco.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually, no, I tell a lie. I think I've only been twice. Yeah, twice, I think.
Okay.
Alfiga conference. And it was great. Yeah, it was a good laugh. It was a getaway. And it was absolutely lovely. Nowadays, you guys do your conference in Telford. Now, I'm going to say that again. It used to be in Monaco, and now it's in Telford. Now, I know no other provider is doing it in Monaco anyway, but I just want to know, when you were looking up, all right, we're not going to go to Monaco, where should we go? How did you decide on, no offense to anyone from Telford, but be free to take offense. But anyway, Telford, how did you end up in Telford?
I think it was more about the sort of strategy that the business has been through. So when you were fortunate enough, and I never got to go to, it wasn't in
you never got to go to Monaco?
Unfortunately not. I
No
wasn't
way.
with Alfega at the
Ah,
time.
you've been missing out.
We were part of, we still are part of a European network, but the events and the sort of view at that time was to have European conferences to bring everyone together from different parts of the country, different parts
idea.
of Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, why did they give that up?
I think because every country feels that because we've got so many local agenda issues that pharmacies need to look after, the needs of the UK are very different to those, for example,
Of
in
Monaco.
Spain or in Portugal.
I'm sure the needs of Monaco are much different.
That the conferences should be more national, and so that we can deal with the issues that are challenging our pharmacists in the UK. And that's why we decided to make.
Do you reckon
them
you
more
can kick it up the
UK-centric.
chain to say if they can bring them back?
I'll give it a go,
Say,
but I can't promise
say
anything.
there's a serious concern between the membership that Telford just isn't cutting it. It's not quite the same.
I'll do my best.
Everyone who comes on Mandy, we always ask them to contribute to their chosen charity. So it's the same with you and Alfiga. So what would Alfiga's chosen charity be? How much would you like to contribute, and why did you choose this charity?
That's a fantastic idea. Our chosen charity is Pharmacist Support.
Okay.
This is our third year of supporting the bursary scheme within Pharmacist Support, which is really meaningful because it helps those pharmacy trainees to become pharmacists who might be having challenges in being able to complete their education to become a pharmacist. So we'll be delighted to donate £1,000 towards that scheme with Pharmacist Support.
Well, that's fabulous. Pharmacist Support. I know I should have probably heard of these charities. I'm going to look it up. But it sounds like a great charity because pharmacists, as soon as you said Pharmacist Support, I was going to line up right behind to say, I think I'm part of the charity. I think I should deserve to get something from this one. But no, that sounds good. So it's a bursary that helps support disadvantaged students to be able to get through the course. Yeah, so it gives,
qualify as pharmacists and be able to practice and do the things that we've been fortunate to be able to do.
That's brilliant, and I think that £1,000 donation is going to be they'll be well appreciated by them. I'm sure.
You've got to make it flow, right? You can't just.
I forgot what I was talking about. This is the problem when you're not a professional, Mandy. You end up forgetting what you're talking about. You end up going completely off. Mandeep, as you know, that we've got a revolution going on. The Make Pharmacy Great Again revolution. I've got loads of merch for you. This one's for you to take away, and what you got to do is you got to spread the word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is like the best cult on earth. Yeah, the pharmacy cult. So you've got to, it's almost like it's like a giant Ponzi scheme. You've got to tell the next person who tells the next person. I look at you and you come across as a bucket hat kind of guy. What do you think?
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Make pharmacy great again.
That fit me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look the business. Right. I've got some quick fire questions for you. These are AI generated questions, as
Okay,
always, right?
okay.
So I don't generate them. We don't know. I don't know what they are until they hand me them.
Okay.
If you weren't in pharmacy, what would you be doing?
Pilot.
What?
Yep.
Pilot?
Yeah.
How did that? That's a bit of a difference. There's a bit of a change.
Childhood ambition.
Really?
Yeah.
Why don't you do it?
Never had the opportunity.
Really? But have you ever like?
I've done a couple of private lessons, but not taken it beyond.
Really?
that.
What was that like?
Fantastic.
Or the little propeller
Yeah,
planes things?
Yeah.
It's a bit dangerous, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Them little
but-
planes.
Oh, the thrill of being on a plane.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like a kid even now.
Seriously?
On a plane, yeah.
How is that's proper? So how come you only did a couple? Did you not get your this license or what have you?
It's a lot of investment, time and money.
Money,
Just
isn't it?
haven't had the opportunity.
It's like
to.
ridiculous. It's like a few £100 an hour, isn't it?
Yeah,
For that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And exams.
And oh yeah, after that's the last thing you need. This is a odd one. Okay, if you had to survive on one meal forever, what are you picking?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Just one meal. Think about it.
Oh, I'd give me lamb chops any day.
Lamb chops.
Yeah.
They've got to be cooked right.
Yeah.
You know, if they're not
otherwise-
cooked right, it
if
doesn't
they're
work,
not,
does it?
Exactly. If they're not, then yeah.
Yeah, you don't want them chewy
No,
and tough
no,
and the stuff.
no.
Right, you got
You know,
you got to get
you
them
know
right.
exactly what.
Yeah,
what to-
we'll get some lamb chops later.
Thank you for watching the Pharmacy Planet podcast. Like, subscribe, share.